excited to have you here for this very important and necessary event with a lineup of wonderful readers that we are so excited joined us tonight. Just a few housekeeping items. I'm Sophia. I'm the Senior Engagement Coordinator here at the workshop. If you're new to this space, the Asian American Writers Workshop is a national nonprofit, literary arts nonprofit, and we highlight Asian American and Asian diasporic writers. We host events. We have 2 fellowships annually, the Open City and Margins Fellowship, and we also have an online magazine called The Margins, which you all should definitely check out. We have 2 gender-neutral bathrooms. Both of them are on your left side, right here through the kitchen, and the door right next to it. Tonight's event is masked, so thank you all for bringing your masks. We have extras at the door. And finally, I'm happy to represent the AAWW union. And with that, I will pass it off to our MC, Malvika Jolly.
Hi, everyone. All right, if you can hear me, put your hands up. Okay, if you can't hear me, put one hand up. All right, perfect. I feel like I've learned that trick from, I'm always sitting in like the strangest seat in the house, and then I can never hear, so you have to make sure 100%. Hi, I'm Malvika Jolly. Thank you all for being here tonight. So I run the reading series, The New Third World, and The New Third World is inspired by the history of the non-aligned movement. And just show of hands, who's kind of familiar with like the non-aligned movement? All right, okay, amazing. So the non-aligned movement was, it was basically in a period of decolonization. We'll get into it together. How about that? All right, so this is a reading series inspired by third worldisms, by networks of solidarity, co-conspiracy, and friendship across distance, by our collective inheritance and the legacies of anti-colonial and liberational movements, by the power of our collectivity as children of the dream of the third world. And it's an honor to be here and to be able to put together this fundraiser in collaboration with the Asian American Writers Workshop, and to have worked with former Margins Fellow and editor of Kukash Review, the fabulous Ghinwa Jawhari, who put together this phenomenal lineup in a heartbeat, as well as with the illustrious Devin Manibo, who represents the workshop. Devin is in Chennai today. Ghinwa is here in her heart, but I am here standing in front of you, and I am so heartwarmed today to be the one welcoming our beautiful lineup of readers. We have a pretty hot house here. We have first up Kamelya Omayma Youssef, then we have Lara Atallah, followed by Mariam Bazeed, Sahar Delijani, Siham Inshassi joining us through the magic of Zoom, and to close us out for the evening, Sahar Romani, who will all be reading and directing us towards love, towards liberation, towards memory, and towards return. And as many of you know, tonight is a fundraiser for Gaza, so thank you for your generous donations. All the proceeds from ticket sales tonight will go towards purchasing eSIMs for Palestinians without internet or phone connections to keep them online and connected to one another and the global community during this ongoing genocide. To that end, we have special copies of the print edition of I Want Sky, edited by Mariam Bazeed, as well as broadsides of many of the poems you will hear tonight, designed and printed by Lara Atallah, available for purchase in the back, so please check those out. And I've been thinking a lot recently about collectivity and the gathering. Collectivity as a survival mechanism, as a way of ensuring our futures and pasts by knotting them together. There are many stories of poets in exile, as many stories as there are of poets, as many as there are of exiles. In one, Edward Said is sitting in Beirut alongside Urdu poet Fez Ahmed Fez, who has made his home in exile in Beirut as well. And they are joined by another Pakistani poet, Iqbal Ahmed, also in exile. Together they sit in a dingy restaurant late at night, reciting verses to one another. Said writes, after a time, Fez and Iqbal stopped translating their verses for my benefit, or I for theirs, but as the night wore on, it did not matter. What I watched required no translation. It was an enactment of a homecoming, expressed through defiance and loss, as if to say, Zia, we are here. And Zia was the military dictator in Pakistan at the time. And from across the world, they say, Zia, we are here. Tonight, we say, Bibi, we are here. We are practicing this vital choreography of gestures, a refusal to be evicted out of what is yours. Like Kamelya says, the one that can kill the beast lives within its belly. So there are here's all around the world, here's in the restaurants and the poetry readings of every empire, and we are gathering within them. In Fez's poems from his own exile in Beirut, he writes again and again of Palestine, lullabies for her children, poems for her martyrs. In his view, exile is a here, and each here births a Philistine. Each wound is a here, and each wound creates a Philistine. He does not need to have been there to know that. He writes, wherever I have gone across the spans of my homelands, I have carried in my heart the burning of your disgracement. I have carried in my heart the hopes of all the lamps lit in your name, your kindnesses, your memories, your pangs of longing came along. The scents of your flowering citrus trees, so many unseen friends I have never met, whose company I have carried with me. In how many hands over all that time did my hands stay intertwined? In the friendless highways of faraway foreign lands, on the nameless, unmarked alleys of strange cities, on whichever earth has bloomed the flag of my blood, flows here still my homeland of Palestine's sorrowful flag. Our enemies have laid waste to one Palestine. How many Palestines have our wounds created? And that's Fez Ahmed Fez from a poem called Falastini Shohedon Jo Pardes Mein Kam Aaye. So this reading series is named, as I said, for the Non-Aligned Movement, which was a Cold War-era alliance of nearly freed nations in the wake of liberation struggles, people's movements, political revolution all across the globe against colonial oppressors, fights that they actually won across much of the world, and they encompassed almost all of Africa, South America, Central South Asia, emerging into a world where the US and the USSR represented the major blocs around which power was organized. And our leaders of these countries, well, they looked to the left and they looked to their right. They looked to the ideologies of Soviet state communism and Western liberal democracy, and they chose to align themselves with neither. Instead, they aligned themselves with one another. And in the mathematics that still underpin our coalition building from the margins to this day, they found that they were, in fact, the majority of the world. So it was a radical moment of profound collective imagination and seeing the world differently, an essentially ethical and imaginative act which carries transformational potential. So we return to the historical moment of the Third World Movement as a critical rupture point, a portal, a gateway, when anti-colonial and resistance struggles for people of color across the globe crossed, collided, and formed a net. We do so to remind ourselves that we are still being held in that net, and we have a role in keeping it strong, that these legacies of solidarity against our shared oppressors are an inheritance, to remember to spit in the soup of empire however we can, to show up each day with the knives between our teeth, and that our circumstances are not so disconnected. How could they be when we are each other's past, present, and future? May we see Gaza and all of Palestine liberated in our lifetimes. And first up, we have the wonderful reader, Kamelya Omayma Youssef. Kamelya is a poet, teacher, and literary worker between New York and Dearborn with roots in Lebanon. She is the author of a book with a hole in it, which came out in 2022 with Wendy's Subway. Her work has been published with 1080 Press, Mizna, The Margins, Michigan Quarterly Review, among others. She edits books at Everybody Press and teaches workshops with her friends, and she knows what it is to sit in discomfort. Please give a warm welcome. Clap her up to the stage for Kamelya.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Malvika. Thank you, everybody, for being timer. I'm gonna, another thing that's for sale in the back is with a friend and comrade, my friend we made these zines, and they're for sale in the back. And they have the 8 points from Basil al-Arash, who wanted to, was trained as a pharmacist and then was forced to be a political theorist and fighter. And so his 8 points are in the back in this zine. You should keep them in your pocket. And then on the inside of the zine, another fugitive text is a scan from the Trinity of Fundamentals, which was just released by 1804 Books and collectively translated by the Palestinian Youth Movement. This book was smuggled out of prison through capsules. And so, which I'll say this right now, capsules digested and ingested and then digested through Palestinian prisoners, which is to say, kharahum ashraf minna, which is to say their shit is honorable. And so, yeah, I'm going to just read a few of these points. He says, you want to be an intellectual, then you must resist. Otherwise, you and your education are worthless. Guerrilla warfare is never based on the logic of conventional wars. Never measure it against conventional wars. The enemy will spread photos of their invasion. This is part of psychological warfare. Don't let it weaken your resolve. Never spread the occupation's propaganda. Do not contribute to instilling a sense of defeat. Never spread panic. Be supportive of the resistance. Do not believe that the resistance is collapsing. Our direct human and material losses will be much greater than the enemy's. This counts for all of Greater Asia and all of Africa and all the United States. Unfortunately, our direct human and material losses will be much greater than the enemy's, which is natural in guerrilla wars that rely on willpower, the human element, and the extent of patience and endurance. We are far more capable of bearing the costs. So there's no need to compare or be alarmed by the magnitude of numbers. Let your alarm be channeled into action. These are for sale, and you can Venmo or put money in the folder and the envelope, and all proceeds are going to go towards families in Gaza. I'm going to start with words of another Palestinian. Najwan Darwish, who is from Jerusalem, and today I wanted to remind us who we are. So many of us historically come from villages, right? So we'll start with not even village. This is in his book, Exhausted on the Cross. And also village knowledge is indigenous knowledge. And so we must turn to our indigenous knowledges. Not even villages. You're not even villages, but you like to call yourselves a city. I look down and see the future crawling toward you like a massive snake of stone that once swallowed a city that was happy to remain a cluster of villages leaning on one another. They like to call themselves a city, while the future crawls toward them like a mute mass of flames. Another one. One day, good morning, crow. You thirstily wipe your beak on a cinchona branch while I look for someone to break bread with. One day, man and bird will eat from a single plate, will speak a single language. An exorcism. It is time for a warding off. The red-bellied woodpecker grows red beyond her nape. She casts transformation into her own body, parallel realities manifold. I beg for a day untouched by. I beg for an exorcism. I wash the whole damn country in blood. Tahir, tahir. When there is no water, it is still pious to wash off with dirt. Cannibalize your capitalism, please. Oh, where is my lyric? Here, let me confess. Oh, moon who cannot hear but witnesses. I was deluded by a beautiful loop. I put misery on repeat. I lost count of days and became a mistake. I let the empire of him fodder me. I lost my teeth in my dreams and the global psyop. I am still fighting for my frontal lobe. Do you witness me, moon? And do you, audience in America, permit me my sentimentality? I must send a letter to the moon. I call يا moon. ابعت لي الاعتذار. ابعت لهم سلاح وخناجر. ابعت طيران وسلام. We see you tonight, moon. You'll see them tomorrow. Take with you forever, moon, and place it under their feet. I, at the consideration of the moon and Gaza, have arrived at a necessary pause. Arrived. What came before arrival? Elisions and fraudulent wars, followed by the burning bosom of empire, all the milk poison white. We went to school among fumes of factories, anything better than bombs. Bombs brought us here, kept machine churning. Bombs always a threat and a reality, never far in genetic memory. Solution temporary, solution silence. Stay quiet with your subversions, they'll take us away. Bombs like knocks on doors. The FBI, a neighbor, along with the SLA. This place, an army with proxy armies. Not everyone understands proxy wars. Some of us have proxy wars in our lineage. What's your neighbor's war story? We keep them, kept them under our tongues until the veil dropped, now imminent. Neighbor, what wars you? Neighbor, down the block, lady in her white socks selling us candy, what wars you? We rode to you on pegs, our cousins were our armies, till we became old enough to bleed. Arab became Arabic girl, became Arab, became Arab, became what I wish were more insurgent. Maybe it all, maybe smokestacks and baba hands and mama's hands and tetas walking streets. The streets, as you know, are for the hajjis. I'm sure some of us came here easy. I just don't know who those us's are. Are you sick of our tragedies yet? Get sicker. You go live behind the poison factory. Got 2 more minutes. The sayers saying together, practicing tuba'adness, invitation to participate, say, the poet's seclusion is a myth. Everyone's a universe, yes, constituting a universe. Decenter the center, become ubiquitous. Quit the mainstream, divert the river. Create new confluences. Surrender your space to potential energy. Engage the spirit inside the brain. Catalog movements. Surprise collaborations. Seek a destined sorceress space. Suspend the body. Open fresh flesh. Martyr the self for the hurt cause. Claws wearing collective breath. Reclamation. If we all say it's true, and so, corrupted sanctimony atop the grave. No one is innocent under colonial logics. No civilian remains on stolen. Accept. A chant won't and will do. A momentary breath. The being, the body. Sk. Red line obituary. Barrage. Cease. Barrage. Fire. Cease. Fire. I bet you Biden's gonna take up a move to lessen the lesson their bodies will take. Surrender, solipsism, sleepy death, sedated empire, corroborated tale, a convenient alibi. I tried and continue the trying for Tigray, for Sudan, for Congo, for Black America, for the queer body, the grieving dancer, stomping on her land, the seed-bearing immigrant, the first origin and arrival, a respect for the land, a sailing descent, for all the goddened mermaids in Norbese's zong, belabored song. They sang in the tragedy, they massacre the macabre, the murders, the earths. The air struck, bombed home in Jabalia, in Philadelphia, the trail of torrents coming for their necks. Will we ever sleep again without a friend on watch? When the drones were peaking, I saw the techno end, humming enemies airborne, hovering in violent fear, cowardly hatred, to create an enemy from human flesh, admonish the human for leaving out the human from the definition of human, owed collective breath, awaiting retribution, some kind of place, adjudicated justice, abolishing courts. In this long moment, I received the attention and your breath and a sense of normal amidst specialized death. As Lenin says, carry on regular activity to guarantee the highest probability of the success of an uprising. Thank you.
The last time I saw Kamelya, I heard the story of her book launch. And at her book launch, she told me, she was like, well, I came with my mother's knife. But don't worry, it was serrated. And then so the book is called Book with a Hole in It. And she explained she wanted everyone to become familiar with the unbinding of a book. And over time, I've come to know that the book was fragmented to begin with and stitched together. And so here we are, unbound. Thank you, Kamelya. Next up, please put your hands together, start rubbing them together, warming them up, because we're going to give a really, really warm welcome to Lara Atallah. Wait, I have to read her bio. Lara Atallah is a multidisciplinary artist and writer. Her practice explores the political dimensions of landscape, probing the futility and fluidity of borders as man-made constructs. Her writing has appeared in Art Forum, Camera Austria, Kukash, Split This Rock, 128 Lit, and In My Heart. She's the author of Edge of Elysium, Volume 1, and the full-length Exit Signs on a Seaside Highway, which came out 2023 with Everybody Press. The last time I saw Lara, she made a beautiful risotto inspired by literature, so now for real, give her a warm welcome, Lara Atallah.
Thank you, Malvika, for this very warm introduction. Thank you all for being here. I like to start these readings by reading Palestinian poetry. And today on the menu we have Mahmoud Darwish. We're going to keep it a little traditional. And this poem is titled If I Were Another. If I were another. If I were another on the road, I would not have looked back. I would have said what one traveler said to another. Stranger, awaken the guitar more. Delay our tomorrow so our road may extend and space may widen for us and we may get rescued from our story together. You are so much yourself, and I am so much other than myself right here before you. If I were another, I would have belonged to the road, so that neither I nor you would return. Awaken the guitar, and we might sense the unknown and the route that tempts the traveler to test gravity. I am only my steps, and you are both my compass and my chasm. If I were another on the road, I would have hidden my emotions in the suitcase. So my poem would be of water, diaphanous, white, abstract, and lightweight, stronger than memory and weaker than dewdrops. And I would have said, my abyss is this expanse. If I were another on the road, I would have said to the guitar, teach me an extra string, because the house is farther and the road to it prettier. That's what my new song would say. Whenever the road lengthens, the meaning renews, and I become two on this road, I and another. So I'm going to read one poem, and then I'm going to switch gears to fiction. Ooh. Getting ahead of ourselves. Have you ever seen a world belong to itself less? Every day you mother a grief the size of a crater, the one from a love that kills you one lost year at a time, a land that spits you out all shards, thorn, burlap, and smoke, life-streamed hell and a shriek that rattles all your ghosts. You run the list of groceries, stock your pantry with the past, displace the spice container to make room for rice, soak your chicken in oil from a martyred tree. The smoke in your kitchen billows soft as a lullaby, but you hoarded the sumac so long it's gone stale. Your mind builds a door and you lock yourself out. You return neither messages nor calls, but miss not a single headline. The horrors, a knife slicing your sleep. In one nightmare, a soldier takes over your house, commands you to be his servant wife. You are to bake him tarts and feed him citrus, but above all else, you are to tell him he is a good man, and you are happy he is here. And you are to say it all with a smile, or else. Your mind locks messages and calls. You return not a single headline. A soldier builds a door. In one nightmare, you lock yourself out. And your face breaks into a smile until an ambulance outside wakes you. And here you are, in your bed, the city, a wolf heaving on your chest. Its crowds, a sea of sameness, calling out to you, asking, when are you? I was inspired to read this today after I saw this. There's a lot that's been enraging the past 4 months. Like I can count the ways, but this one story that ran in the occupiers' media in Hebrew a couple of days ago about occupation soldiers taking over Gazan homes and cooking with pantry staples that they find in homes that just boiled my blood in ways that I can't even begin to articulate. And I just keep thinking about the desecration of personal space and private spaces, but also the desecration of a kitchen, especially in an Arab household. But anyways, I digress. About a year ago, so I wrote a poetry book last year, and then which got published last year, and then a year ago, I had a really bad nightmare that was very elaborate. And when I woke up from it, I was like, well, that sucked, a dream. But it's an interesting premise for a novel. And I kind of shifted gears ever since, and I've been writing more fiction these days. And I'm going to read an excerpt, for better or for worse. I'm so sorry, it's a draft. You say that now. So the premise, just to give you a bit of a background, the character in this novel gets into a car crash. The story begins in our current reality. The character lives in Lebanon, and she gets in a car crash. And the car crash, instead of like killing her, the building that she crashes into turns out to be a portal, and she wakes up in a parallel universe where it is still the present. We have not moved in time. We're not in the past. We're not in the future. It's the present. But in that universe, we're in a universe where the British Mandate and the French Mandate never happened. And so the state of Israel never happened. And what ensues is the exploration of a world that possibly could have been. It's not a utopia by any stretch of the imagination. It's not a better world. It's not a worse world. It's a different world. And it's been an exercise that I've been very keen on exploring, especially of late. And so this is an excerpt from somewhere in this book. And we are currently in Akka, Palestine, but it's another Akka. We stumbled back from the concert, our bodies wavering against gravity. My heart rate spiked and vertigo was clawing its way to my head. I squeezed Ahmed's arm a little tighter and took a deep inhale. It had gotten chilly. The cold slithered its way up my sleeves. Though winter was waning, nights could still blindside you with their crispness. Here and there, cats had staked their territory for the evening on the hood of random cars. Walking in the old quarter, I silently marvel. Walking in the old quarter of Akka, I silently marveled at the buildings that stood on each side of the street. Each of them the product of labor that is centuries old. I run my fingers against as many of them as I can and feel the reverberations of time ripple on my skin. My hand brushes against the phantom shoulder of the man who laid these stones centuries ago. If I close my eyes, I can almost conjure his voice, the smell of the air, and the sound of tree leaves bristling nearby. Centuries later, fragments of his being continue to inhabit the present and mingle with every dweller nearby. Sorry. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. I take note of the fact that my feet are touching land my ancestors walked on. This Akka was allowed to age. She carried with her the promise of past prophecies, of that of an unwritten future drafted by a sovereign present. How many fragments of how many souls are currently intertwining with mine on the land we were robbed of in the world I left behind? Excuse me. I can feel the minutes liquefy. This is not happening. My life receded behind me into a speck of dust. The night stared at us with a wistful glow. Is it a threat or is it like a promise?
It's a birthday.
I'm so sorry. Where was I? The night stared at us. The night stared at us with a wistful glow. On the streets, children buzzed around the small shops, and I watched as their joy lit up the air like fireflies. Over by the Nasr roundabout, the AAWW troupe was getting ready to start their performance. Women dressed in thobes were selling black tea for 2 PAD a pop. Oh yeah, just side note, I had to invent like a whole new currency for this thing. It's been a nightmare. A couple of teenagers passed by us in rollerblades. The town was alive, unaware of its other past that killed it. And I stood in these streets a witness bearing a defunct testimony. The levity of it all felt jarring. The loss we collectively understood in the old timeline had always been rhetorical, a thing we relegated to the confines of our slaughtered imaginations. I'm so sorry. In this world, I found all the worlds slain at the altar of empires. Here, in this place, in this Palestine that has never known the brutality of forced displacement, genocide, apartheid, and the incalculable loss of millions of lives, their respective individual universes extinguished, loss had a face. It materialized as sounds, textures, innovations. Or at least we make it entertaining. Textures, innovations that we'd never come to know of in my old world. Loss beckoned to my bones and built a home for itself in my atoms. The size of this heartbreak was damning. My stream of consciousness was interrupted by a vendor selling roses. How about a rose for the lovely lady? He shoots over a smile. Why don't you go ahead and give me 3? The man ties the crimson flowers with a pink ribbon and craft paper and hands them to Ahmed. May they be an omen of your best days to come, he says, bidding us farewell with his hand over his chest. Ahmed hands me the bouquet and coyly says, good things come in 3, right? Right. We walked in silence for what seemed like a long while before coming upon the infamous 700-year-old olive tree in Oddish Park. As he stared ahead, Ahmed says, All love blooms from a love of land. A toddler learns the world by crawling on the ground. We learn the earth through our feet, through rugged terrain, fine sand or moss. Every land speaks to us. I love you because I've learned to love an olive sapling I planted with my dad when I was just 5, knowing it will bear fruit 40 years later, after I, myself, cycled through many transformations. I knew it would keep blooming. My father learned love tending to orange groves in Jaffa and picking them during harvest season. It is how he learned to love my mother. We learned love through land. We mold one another as time and life molds us. I would love to keep going, but I don't think I can. So, I don't want to take up more time. If you want to keep, if you want to read for me, go ahead. Because I don't think it's like irritating too. If I'm like coughing every 2 seconds. Okay, it ends at world, so like this is nothing. But then you start with outside.
Okay.
Thanks.
Outside, the waves crashed furiously under a silver sky. Dawn had just started to break, and the wind pushed open the old glass doors, making the sheets flutter. A chill ran up my spine as Ahmed's words seeped into my skin. I stared at his darkened silhouette as he got up to close the window. A shadow. Breakfast? He half whispered, with a faint smile. I nodded, words stuck in my throat. He leaves a kiss on my forehead, and I finally get out of bed. In the bathroom, I splashed water on my face and stared at my reflection for a little while as the water kept running in the sink. Just a year ago, I'd wake up, look myself in the mirror, and plead, please live. Want something, anything. Is there anything in this world more precious than wanting? In New York, I used cocaine to cosplay God, but was never more than a deadbeat Icarus whose wings burned long before I ever got close to the sun. Here I am today, an imposter who glitched into this reality where I don't exist and found my way to a home I only knew and understood through secondhand accounts. For the first time in my life, I feel tethered to the world. Thank you.
Collaboration. Yeah, take your things.
Thanks, Mariam.
Lara, we love you so much. You need never suffer for us. Though I was recently at a reading, and the person reading began to cough a lot before they read a poem. They were coughing and coughing and coughing, and everyone was, same thing. Poets are kind, the lovers of the word are. Everyone's like getting something, something. And then she read the poem. She read the whole poem, and it was she sneezes in the poem. And everyone shouts, "Bless you!" And that's her last line. She'd been playing us the whole time. Thank you, Lara. Next up, we have Mariam Bazeed. Ever kind, ever generous, ever ready to step in. Mariam Bazeed is a multi-award-winning Egyptian immigrant, poet, playwright, spoken word artist, editor, stage actor, performance artist, and cook. Living in Brooklyn, an alliteration-leaning writer of prose, poetry, plays, and pantry lists. This is going to be fun. Their work across genres has been published in print and online, and their plays performed on both sides of the Atlantic and maybe soon inside. To procrastinate from facing the blank page, Mariam curates and runs a monthly-ish salon and open mic in Brooklyn, and is a slow student of Arabic music, but fluent in the heart. Mariam, take it away. Warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I'm gonna just, I'm reading a few poems today, and I just want to tell you a little bit about the context of how they came to be. On October like 17th to the 24th or something, I was traveling to Iowa City for a research project. There's like a really incredible collection of concrete and visual poetry there, and I was there to do research. And working with a few people at the library and like some folks who did like book arts kind of stuff and like fine press printing there and whatever. And everyone was like falling all over themselves every single time I spoke to them to tell me how liberal like the place was. They're like, we know it's Iowa, but you know, Iowa City's called the Blueberry. The Blueberry. Why is it called the Blueberry? Because it's the only blue voting, whatever the fuck, in the red state. You know, and like, I was there at a very particular time, and you really couldn't have known it. Like, I was staying with somebody who lived close to campus, and so like I would walk for a half hour and try to take a different route each time, and like all the houses had all the right signage, you know, like in this home we believe that like nobody's illegal and love is love and nobody's a man and like whatever. Like all the things work, you know, and like this is a collective house and like whatever, and then silence about what was actually happening. And like along my route was the birthright office, doors open, like everything totally fine. So I was thinking a lot about like suburbs and silence and like the place of the liberal institution and all of these things. And just for myself, like I was not thinking about this in order to like eventually perform these poems or anything, but I was like living in the gaslighting reality where it's like, you know, a genocide's happening except from the media, you know? And so I was like, let me just for my own practice and sanity, like sit with the reality of what's going on for a few minutes every day. And they have these like kiosks in the library where you just hit a button and it prints out like a piece of short literature. So it could be a poem, it could be nonfiction, it could be whatever. And kind of the only option I got was whether I wanted to read an Iowa writer or just an international writer. So I picked international, as in like global. Like they might have been from Iowa, but Iowa City people really love Iowa City, and they sort of print out. I'm going to show you. They use like kind of receipt technology, you know, when you go to a supermarket and it like thermally prints something for you. So this is what comes out, you know, and then I was like, I'm gonna make erasure poems. I'm gonna make one a day for each day that I'm here. And I love erasure for what it kind of does in bringing in the archive, subverting the archive. But I think in this case was very much wanting to be like, okay, the constraint is it's whatever this machine is gonna spit at me, and I still have to say something about Gaza. So I didn't like hit the button, and then when I was like, that would be a cute poem to erase, I just hit the button every day, and whatever came out, I made these erasure poems. So I'm gonna read a couple of them, and if you would like, I made little zines of all of them at the back, with a couple of like bookmark erasure poems, but these are like the poems as I would have written them if I had control of like where the line breaks would be and all of that, right? So that's at the back, and as we have already said, the money is going to buy eSIMs for people in Gaza who are out of touch with the world. So these are, I'm calling the zine the Gaza Blueberry Erasures. And I'm going to read a couple of the poems from here. This one's Vigilant. The face is 5 eyes wide in every crowd. Impossible to unsee. The dead the dream life, the yet to be, gazing at you from the other side of time. I wrote that one on October 18th. The cumulative death toll in Gaza by then had reached 3,478. This is a family trip. We had been to the moon. We are here in this photograph, the two of us standing on the grass in front of our house. Sister, black buttons, white shirt. Little boy, big sister, smiles, the camera. Children caught in a photo. Dad stopped taking photographs. A great number of monsters about to play on the lawn. This is the menagerie machine. The cavalry horse is behind us, complete with kicking hooves and a spray of mane, strained, snarling silver eyes, lost hope, decayed. To speak of the circumstance that had brought too much power, the memories of ostrich, the machine's 3 miseries, endless circles during the day, motionlessness at night, and most of all, the cavalry, the complement of their jealousy. Praise break our pattern, darkened to make way for the stars. All else lay still, halted, moonlight like a jewel. Imagine not having any trappings. Some days that song was a lullaby. Other days it was a dirge. Today it lingered in a strange disguise, as though in a different key, chased my voice away, but twice the splendor. The stargazer sure aims high. Only my neck was carved to curve upward. Inescapable, the crescent moon. I would like to be addressed not by the likes of you. You're so used to your own smell, I said, as tenderly as I wished them to treat me. You don't even notice it. But it's clear to us. We can put up with it for as long as we have to. We'd outlast them, after all. It came softly, an embarrassed sound. They hung their heads with their eyes and for once, mouths closed. I wondered if this was peace. No. This was silence and stillness. We'd still keep spinning and stopping, spinning and stopping. Whether we moved or stood still, we went nowhere. My stargazing head lowered. Then I spotted it. A small mirror in the shape of a star. The reflection of my eye peered back at me. I was a stargazer indeed. I took advantage of my long neck once more as I turned. Our mirrors reflecting into each other formed an endless, straight corridor that led us somewhere beyond the confines of the machine. Freedom in our own night sky, bliss of all bliss. This is the last one I'll read. This is a poem that I only took bits of the title, so it's the shortest one, and it is both a poem and a prayer. The sword swallower cuts their tongue. Can I get an amen from you, everybody? Amen. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, next up we have Sahar Delijani. Sahar is the author of Children of the Jacaranda Tree, which I identify as one among. It's an internationally acclaimed novel which has been translated into 32 languages, published in more than 75 countries. She's the recipient of the Courage to Write grant, the Society of Authors and Authors Foundation grant, and various fellowships at Hedgebrook, Art Omi, and others. Her work has been longlisted for the Granham Foundation Prize and nominated for the Pushcart and Best American Essay Series. Her writings have appeared in McSweeney's, Literary Hub, Quelly Journal, the Bellevue Review, and many more. Born in Iran in 1983, she grew up in California and lived for many years in Italy. But right now, she lives in New York, she's in this room, and she's about to break it down for you. Please give it up for Sahar Delijani.
Thank you, everyone. I've been so excited about being here and sharing these safe spaces. We don't have that many of them, especially for the past few months. And I felt that, with what's been happening, I need that more than any other time because I feel like we've all changed in the past few months. I feel like a part of all of us has died, even if we're not Palestinians, not Arabs, but a part of all of us has died. And I just hope that maybe a part of us will be reborn soon. So when everything that's been happening started, I started thinking a lot about the Arab Spring. And it was a very important moment for me. Because I'm always writing about dictatorships and resistance, and it was just glorious what was happening. And we all know what happened afterwards and everything, but I thought that we always have to remember these moments because these moments are true and they exist and they build us. We build on these ashes and on these flowers at the same time. So this piece is about that. It's called Fire, Earth, Spring. In the beginning, there was fire, and it came in the shape of a young man writhing and wriggling on the steps of a municipal office. His name was Mohammed Bouaziz. He was 26 years old. He was a street vendor. He lived in the white and blue town of Sidi Bouzid in central Tunisia. With his cart of fruit and vegetables, he provided for his mother and 6 siblings. Humiliation drove him to the flames on that crisp, sunny morning, a beating by the police, the confiscation of his cart. He walked up those steps hoping to get his cart back, to speak to someone, to ask for help. No one would listen to him. Mohammed Bouaziz set himself alight outside the municipal office right where the palm trees grew. As the blaze swallowed up his body, he was unaware that this act of rage and desperation would soon set in motion the largest wildfire of revolts the Arab world had seen in decades. It was December 17th, 2010. Rage turned into hope, and hope stole into the ancient lands like a morning mist. It did not stop until it had spread throughout jasmine trees and pyramids, tourist beaches and moonlit deserts, bazaars and hookah bars, lines of soldiers and street vendors, teachers and barbers, doctors and lawyers, workers and farmers. Demonstrations followed, courage was rekindled, city squares taken. Tyrants were on the run. The Arab Spring was born. We come from a history of suffering, the protesters exclaimed, from centuries of exploitation, of degradation. It is up to us to end it differently. The country's future, they said, depends on us. In the year that followed, these revolts sent a shockwave into the hearts of authoritarian regime throughout the Swana region. From Tunisia to Egypt to Yemen to Syria, people rose, demanding justice, freedom, equality, and democracy. And yet, As it always seems to be the case in the tragic history of our lands, the demands of the people went systematically unheard, their rage discredited, their grief vilified, their hopes unacknowledged, and their courage was answered with nothing but bullets and batons. Soon that was not enough. Soon tanks rolled in where just a few months ago people were reciting poetry, and villages were shelled where people had refused to give up rebellion, and mass graves were dug where students had once staged sit-ins, bombs, tanks, gunshots, the smell of burnt flesh. It is not easy to fight where your adversary is armed to the teeth and all you have is the street stretching back behind you. It is not easy when your adversary has the power of reincarnation and all you have is one life which has never been easy. It is not easy to fight where your adversary thinks the world belongs to it and all you have is the unrelenting belief that it doesn't because you're there, and as long as you're there, the fight is not over. The Arab Spring was born out of a people's audacious vision for a just and democratic future. It did not know borders, nationalities, nor religion. The slogan, "Get Out," roared the rejection of dictatorships, oppression, corruption, and violence. It was a courageous demonstration to the world that, contrary to popular belief, the people of our region are not mere victims bereft of agency and aspiration. We're not all battered-souled and broken wings. We're not all fragmented after effects of yet another mayhem rocking our lives. The Arab Spring was significant, not only because it ousted two ferocious dictators, but because it spoke our resilience, our magnitude, that we know we deserve better, that we're not resigned to our destiny and have the audacity to dream of a better future. None of this, however, was truly the beginning. Not the flames, not the revolts, not the spring. To understand the story better, we have to go back even further, before the revolts, before the dictators. In the beginning, there was the earth, and it came in the forms of lands trodden under the boots of colonizers, protectors, and foreign-backed rulers. The boots spoke English, French, German, Italian, Russian, and Spanish. Sometimes the boots were multilingual. Sometimes they promised roads. Sometimes oil refineries. Sometimes they built schools to teach us how to better hate ourselves. Always, they refused to leave. They bombed if necessary. They threw bodies into the river if necessary. They raped and pillaged. Sometimes, they dreamed that these lands were truly their God-given right and woke up believing in their dreams. Their dreams made it easier to spill blood. They dug in their heels, closed their eyes, and let the terror take over. It is impossible to tell the story of our region without going back in time. It is impossible to talk about the misery, the relentless violence, the rise of extremism, authoritarianism, poverty, persecution, the continuous stifling of progressive movements without going back to the moment where lands were taken, then returned, emptied of their pride and future. History has never meant to be about the past. It is not about oblivion, nor peace. History is about why we are the way we are today, why we live the way we live, and die the way we die. The legacy of colonization and imperialism in our region is dizzying myriad of fake borders, heartless nationalism, and religious fanaticism. Those who promised us liberation turned into dictators once in power, and those who promised us a new self out of the ashes of foreign rule gave us nothing but the words of God to hold on to. Soon, we were out of options. Our liberation was postponed to unknown futures. We were gaslighted into thinking prosperity had already been achieved, that the security of our newborn nation was more important than our own safety, its stability than our own integrity, its welfare than our basic human rights. What happened next throughout the Swana region, from Egypt to Libya to Syria to Iraq, and similarly in the non-Arab countries such as Iran and Afghanistan, was not merely the disheartening linearity of history, but the shocking lack of mystery in the way tyrannies rose and planted their roots in the debris and disgrace left behind by colonizers. From torture rooms in Egypt to mass graves in Iran, from shelling of villages in Syria to floggings and public executions in Afghanistan, from Israeli bombs and atrocities in Gaza to slave markets of refugees in Libya, from Kurdish villages gassed in Iraq to Armenian enclaves besieged in Azerbaijan, from the breaking of civil walls everywhere to refugee children drowning over and over and over again in European seas, tyranny in our lands is in continuous metamorphosis. At times it appears in the shape of a ruthless dictator, at times in the form of extremist groups passing off as liberation movements, and other times in the form of occupiers whose sense of home is so destructive that they don't hesitate to raze villages to the ground for its sake. And yet, we are the children of this land. We are here. We are alive. We are the children of its olive groves, its mountains, its seas. We are the children of its history, its revolutions, its fury and frenzy, its prisons, its terror and loss. We are the children of its dreams, of the tomorrow it once envisioned, of the fight that continues to be silenced, buried for prosperity. Nothing ever disappears, neither the loss nor the dream. What we must build is not only what has been destroyed, but the hope that once was, the struggle that still is, and an unfinished revolution that has no alternative but to keep growing, keep spreading its wings far and wide across this land, because this is what we are, a single scream, a single force, a single dance, a single force against those who kill and think we will let them be. That is what brings us together, our stories, memories, future, the promise of our long, undying dreams. And we must own them, stand up for them, and know that our fight is no different to that of our neighbors and that of their neighbors. That happiness is not a solitary thing, and neither is freedom. That only together we can prevail. It is all we have, our only alternative. We must know this, and we must hold on to it, believe in it. And we must always remember where our dreams are, that they're not an instant failure of God, that they are anchored, and they're anchored to something beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have tuning in virtually from a remote location outside of the US. We have Siham Inshassi. Siham is a Palestinian-American author currently working on her first novel. She's the 2023 Miami Book Fair Emerging Writer Fiction Fellow and holds an MFA from the New School, where she was awarded the Ignite Fellowship and worked with the New York Women's Foundation. Her work focuses on culture and identity politics, both in the home and beyond, and explores psychology and human nature and their relationship to cultural dynamics. She's been published in The Margins, The Inquisitive Eater, Brooklyn Mag, and The Drum, alongside many others. And here we go.
Hi everyone. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Malvika. And want to also just quickly, deeply thank Asian American Writers Workshop and the New Third World Reading Series for putting this on, and for your unwavering support for the Palestinian cause. You were deeply appreciated for always holding space for us. And so just thank you so much for inviting me to do this. I wish I could be there with all of you guys, but also kind of look at where I'm at. But you know, I'm gonna read for you something I've been working on. It's draft. It is a draft thing. It is a controversial topic, a little bit of a hot take, something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, but I feel like this is a safe space to kind of engage with it. So it is an essay. And without further ado, I think I'll just jump right in. It is called A Complicated Ode to the Arab Man. They say opportunistic assault often happens in times of violence, that throughout history, rape is used in war as a tool for subjugation, humiliation, and power. They swear by the safe assumption that a handful of bad actors can easily take advantage of chaos, can get caught up in, carried away, or legitimately want to use that type of intimidation. And they conclude that it's just human to do so, that these are base instincts, and that it would frankly be shocking, impossible to imagine that no sexual violence happened on October 7th at all. The they I refer to are the cohort of progressive, educated, anti-Zionist white women who I've been struggling to engage with since this all started. These are women who acknowledge that much of the narratives we are hearing are gross propaganda, lies used to incense the sleepy masses of casual racists, but they leave a small door open and insist that I, as a woman, should follow them through it. They challenge me to reconcile with my own feminism, my own starch stance against patriarchal systems everywhere. They encourage me to align these views with my own mission to break down sexist structures within the Arab world and our relationship to sex as a whole. There's this desperate urge, spawned from a valid need to identify the dangers that surround us, to universalize power structures, to say men are the same everywhere, to say that humans, human men, are all following the same impulses. Years ago, I had a debate with a leftist friend about the definition of human nature. In so many words, he basically called bullshit on the whole concept, which baffled me. Who denies the existence of human nature? It's human nature. Well, it was through him that I learned that privileged, powerful, straight white men have appropriated the term over the years, giving it a meaning that has apparently become common knowledge among many circles, but was entirely foreign to me. These men, I've learned, have managed to link human nature with power. Power? Power. That we are all chasing power of all things. That if given a little, we are apt to abuse it. Hooey, the projecting is strong with that lot. Power. No. Human nature is about survival and belonging. Our behaviors in the world are at our core rooted in these two base needs. Everything beyond that is no longer human nature. It is simply bad behavior, which is taught. So I say no. 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 I reject your premise. White women. Is it so insane to imagine the possibility of certain groups of men on a macro level getting a different message? Is it so unheard of that this brown community that you insist you are not prejudiced against were maybe just not conditioned toward this type of behavior? That maybe, just maybe, wait for it, stranger rape is just not our men's brand. Now, don't get me wrong. Our men are far from perfect. I've had my share of them, my share of stories, my share of grievances to last a lifetime. And that makes it complicated for me to engage in this topic. This is the stuff I think about, gripe about, write about, unabashedly scream from the rafters about, dissecting, discussing, dismantling the broken ways patriarchy has affected Arab women. In short, I read about sex. A lot. I think about spousal abuse, and then consider spousal rape, which I gratefully do not have firsthand experience with, but I can imagine exists in our communities and is rampantly underreported. I think about the harrowing concept of honor killings, which an uncle once alluded to in the context of an argument, far from serious, I can assure, within the comfort of my privileged Western home, but mainly as a veiled threat to remember my roots when my life was being uprooted because I deigned to have, to choose, to enjoy premarital sex. I think about the Arab men in my life who whispered sweet nothings in my ears and performed respect by honoring a long-gone, paper-thin vaginal membrane more than the rest of my glistening, pulsing form. In layman's terms, we call that the anything but approach. I think about the absurd concept of nikah marriages, which I also didn't really have exposure to because I was too busy dating white boys in college. But apparently it's a trend. Our men are so unaccustomed to the idea of violently taking a woman's body that they would go through the long rigmarole of wooing the bodies they want into a sham marriage. Because our men, frankly, our whole community, are fueled entirely by the concept of honor. Forget Harry Carey, my friends, we've truly got you beat. Honor, which is not the same as power. Honor manifests as protection, and often even possession. Honor can make our men shit husbands, pain in the ass brothers, overbearing fathers. It can give them a sense of ownership or rights to the woman in their lives. And yes, violence in that situation is not unheard of, though it might just as plausibly be directed to the man who looked at your wife/sister/daughter a second too long. So what would compel him to engage in a sexual way toward a woman who is a stranger to him? Someone who, in his eyes, is someone else's woman, be it husband or father. And could he dare disrespect that man? But ho, we're sounding a little like patriarchy, aren't we? Men concerning themselves with the grievances of other men? Of course, I'm not denying the issue. So yeah, I get tongue-tied when talking to these progressive, educated, anti-Zionist white feminists. I don't know how best to tell them that I simply think they are wrong. That no, I don't think it would be shocking if the real statistic is 0. That in fact, I believe with every fiber of my being that the statistic is a resounding 0. How do I say, after every way I bash on our men, that I still think they're better than that? To one of these women, I challenge that I personally want to dig deeper into the insight of attack culture that you speak of. I question whether anyone has ever asked if there's a difference between oppressor and oppressed attacks. You use the words subjugation, humiliation, power, as though these urges are universal. Fail to consider that these aren't the goals or even the side ambitions of an attack perpetrated by an oppressed people. At least, not a people who are, in peacetime circumstances, known for being some of the kindest people in the world, who will pull a stranger off the street just to serve you a fresh cup of chai with some zait ou za'atar. The word humiliation especially strikes a cold chill down my spine. You retort that a humiliated people could be compelled to humiliate in return. But here again, you miss something paramount. We Palestinians are not, nor have we ever been, nor will we ever be, a humiliated people. We have immense pride. We have honor, for better or worse, which is evidenced by one of the most recent pictures making the rounds on our feeds of a naked, beaten man holding his chest out, his head high, in the face of his oppressor. We have self-respect. We have love. Endless reams of love. We have fight in us. But that fight is not a colonial fight, so please stop superimposing your imperial narrative on it. Human nature is not about power. Men's nature is not just violent, carnal, base instincts. And resistance is not about subjugation or humiliation. I think that it indeed is quite possible to imagine a violent act of resistance performed in which the men not only resist but have zero urge to exploit female targets in this way. This is my ode to you, Arab men. I love you and I hate you, just as I love and hate this whole messy, imperfect, beautiful culture I happen to be born into. But I root for you, just as I fight for us, because my love is stronger. I have endless reams of it. Thank you.
Close us out for the evening. We have the lovely Sahar Romani. Sahar Romani is the author of the forthcoming chapbook, The Opening, selected as a winner of a Poetry Society of America Chapbook Prize, and she teaches right here in New York City at NYU. Give it up for Sahar.
Thank you, Malvika. Thank you, Asian American Writers Workshop. And thank you to our readers. It's so good to be here with you tonight and to be listening to your words and reading alongside you. And thank you all for joining us. We all know that the genocide that has been unfolding for the past several months has a long history of occupation, of violence. We also know that there's been a long history of resistance through political action, through writing, through art. In 1968, there was a journal that was launched called Lotus, Afro-Asian Writings, that was established by the Permanent Bureau of Afro-Asian Writers. And this was a bureau of writers including Mahmoud Darwish, Fez Ahmed Fez, who Malvika mentioned and referenced a poem from, several other anti-imperialist writers. And so I wrote a poem in homage to this bureau and their legacy of work and resistance. It's called A Poem for the Permanent Bureau of Afro-Asian Writers. Bypass the metropole, south to south, small office and rumble of printers, once Colombo, then Cairo to Beirut, later Tunis, back to Cairo, a bureau, a press, a journal named after the flower that rises in spite, invasion, lotus, in exile, radiant with ink. Darwish slips a poem in an envelope, licks the postage stamp, leans against a cedar filing cabinet behind a puff of smoke. Maybe Fez smiles, hands quivering with an essay from Achebe, each page thick with heat. Tea steeps across the afternoon. Is there a balcony or curtains of gauze? A view of the port, of the coast, and somewhere a radio. The dial never points north. Summer 1968, table of contents. Poem in Punjabi, She Walked Through the Streets by Amrita Pritam. An essay, Resistance Literature in Occupied Palestine by Ghassan Kanafani. Two poems from Ghana, Whither Bound, O Africa, Dark Africa, by M.F. Dai Anang. Could these two continents have one personality, wonders Zaki Najib Mahmoud. Columns typeset in debate with a masthead of cigarettes and sandalwood, each paragraph an intimacy, a fist, a breath of the Arabian Sea, each sentence a slingshot, a heist, a window looking towards something green. This is a poem called Here, and I'm just going to read it. Here is a shelf with cookbooks, dictionaries, Rumi, Ibn Arabi. Here is the cat. Here is a cockroach the cat killed. Here is the kitchen window, morning garbage truck. Here is the bottom drawer of the freezer, compost overflowing eggshells. Here is my hand in your hand. Here is the power cord and the outlet that doesn't work. Here is Sunday. Here, lunch, dal, rice, mango pickle. Here in my pocket, 3 laundry quarters and a receipt. Here is Amy Goodman on the radio. Here is the empire, empire, empire. Here are my socks next to your socks. Here are the bills and a postcard and cardboard that we'll make into protest signs. Here on the top shelf, my first hijab, blue from decades ago. Here on the doorknob, the sun. Here is your shawl, that's sometimes my shawl. Where is my phone? I have to call my mother. Here, a photo of us at Cafe Allegro 11 years ago, our hair long. Here is my janamaz and the Quran. Here's the vibrator. Here, oof, the shower drain clogged again. Here is our 5th apartment together. Here are my eyes. Look how they rest in yours. To close the night, I'd like to read a poem by the Palestinian writer and poet Hiba Abu Nada. She was killed by an Israeli airstrike in southern Gaza on October 20th. This poem has been translated by Huda Fakhruddin. The poem is called Not Just Passing by Hiba Abu Nada. We should read her work, we should read Palestinian writers. Hiba Abu Nada. Not Just Passing. Yesterday, a star said to the little light in my heart, we are not just transients passing. Do not die beneath this glow. Some wanderers go on walking. You were first created out of love, so carry nothing but love to those who are trembling. One day, all gardens sprouted from our names, from what remained of heart's yearning. And since it came of age, this ancient language has taught us how to heal others with our longing, how to be a heavenly scent, to relax their tightening lungs, a welcome sigh, a gasp of oxygen. Softly we pass over wounds, like purposeful gauze, a hint of relief and aspirin. Oh, little light in me, don't die. Even if all the galaxies of the world close in, oh, little light in me, say, enter my heart in peace. All of you, come in.
As well for Kamelya Youssef, Lara Atallah, Mariam Bazeed, Siham Inshassi, and Sahar. Oh my God, my Sahars, my Sahars, and Sahar. And thank you all for coming. Have a beautiful night. I know we have to close out the venue pretty quickly, pretty soon. But please take a moment and look at the broadsides, the zines, and the other materials in the back. We're collecting donations, both in cash and all the other ways. And so there are lots of materials there for you to peek at and get home safe. Thank you all so much.